Okay folks, so I've been doing a lot of chatting on my channel lately about GT40 top end bits and pieces, okay? Heads, GT40 Ps, GT43 bars, Explorer upper and lower intakes, and it kind of dawned on me that back when I did the top end upgrade in my 92 coupe, I had a set of GT40 P heads that were sitting on my shop floor. That's what was actually going to go on this car, but I ultimately decided against them. And I went with the AFR 165's. Now, lots more to come on that later. But based on how these videos have been received, now I never know what you guys are thinking. I mean, I guess I just kind of gauge interest on views, and those videos seem to be doing quite well. So it leads me to believe that there's a lot of people out there considering the GT40 route. Maybe you're even considering, should I do that or should I go the new age aluminum route? And I thought I'd talk you through where my head was at when I started making these decisions. So today we're going to do a comparison on that, and I'm going to tell you all about everything that went into the heart of this build. Okay folks, so welcome to my workbench. This also doubles actually as my recording studio. This is where me and the infamous, well, where I sit when me and the infamous project record our Rolling in My 5.0 podcast. If any of you are interested in listening to that, I've got some links down in the description below. Head down, check it out. It's a great way to pass the time if you're mowing the lawn or whatever and you want to hear some Foxbody wing nuts talking about car content. Now, I wanted to do this in front of my laptop because I want to try to refresh my memory. So much of this stuff happened back in, well, 2017. So I'm going to go through some pictures. I'm going to ultimately overlay them for you in the video screen so you guys have an idea as to what's going on, give you a little bit more context to the story. So, end of 2016, like we're talking December, Christmas time, I get the bright idea that I'm gonna go out in the garage. Probably had way too much to eat and too much to drink, and like I should probably do something with myself. Gonna go out in the garage, I'm gonna have a little chat with my 92 coupe, what my wife likes to call the first wife. Anyway, so my car had been somewhat in storage for the last handful of years at that time. Kids and just life was happening, so it had been sitting for some time, but I'm like, you know, I really want to get it out this year. Let's go see what I got to do to kind of spruce it up a bit and get her going. So pop the hood and I'm like, oh right, my power steering pump, I got to replace this power steering pump. So get looking at that. All the lines that go down to the rack are filthy and the rack's covered in grease, oil, dirt. I'm like, I can't, my OCD won't let me deal with this. I won't be able to sleep at night. I got to clean this up. But the way the pan sits over top of the rack and everything, I'm just like, I don't know if brake clean and a rag's going to do it for me. Plus, my rear main seal's leaking, my oil pan seal's leaking. It just went on and on, right? Like essentially the engine hadn't been touched since I got the car, or it hadn't been touched from the previous owner either. So I'm like, well, I have been thinking about doing this for a little while now. I wonder if I should pull the motor out. Then I can clean the rack and get all this done. Sit down, crack an adult beverage, and start thinking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's time. Let's do it. So I call my buddy up, Ian. He pops over. He's gonna run engine hoist for me. So I start pulling the top end off the motor and essentially disconnecting everything. And then he pops over. We start jacking the motor up and ultimately pull it out. And while we're doing the lift, he says to me, he goes, hey, you ever thought much about doing heads on this car while you've got it out? I thought, not really. I was just gonna seal it up. I was gonna try and keep this like financially reasonable and just buy a seal kit and move on. But and I'm like, well, you know, this is the rabbit hole, right? You think, well, I'm gonna have the motor out. It'd probably be a disservice to myself and all the work I'm about to do if I don't upgrade something. So yeah, I don't know, maybe. He goes, well, I got a set of GT40 P sitting at my shop. Do you want them? I'll sell them to you for cheap. I just want them out of here. I said, sure. So I bought the GT40 Ps. So get the engine on the stand. I start tearing it all down, get the intake off it, to which I might add, this is a Cobra upper and lower intake that I had bought back in like the very early 2000s and just bolted it on with a little bit bigger throttle body. So yeah, that was the only upgrade that this engine had done to it at the time, okay? So peel all that off, get the heads off, and as I pull one of the cylinder heads, I can't remember which cylinder this was, but I notice I've got these goofy hairline scratches in one of the cylinders. I'm like, uh-oh, now I've opened a can of worms, right? So I get on the phone, I call the machine shop. I said, guys, here's what I'm dealing with. I just want to get a gauge for how much you would charge me to bring my motor in and have it honed or bored or whatever. And they said, well, without even seeing it, we're going to tell you the bare minimum is going to be $2,500. I almost dropped the phone. I'm like, well, I wasn't expecting to spend that much money. Plus, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I got these GT40 P heads sitting on the ground here. They need to be freshened up. Valve job. I got to put some better springs in them. I should make sure they're flat and true. And I thought, well, if you're going to charge me $2,500 to potentially just hone this block, I don't even want to ask what you're going to charge me to do the heads. So hang up the phone. I think, okay, now we got to reset and reassess. So I enlisted in the help of another friend, Shannon from Western Motorsports. Some of you watching may be familiar with him. He's a very, very brilliant man. Has built some amazing cars, some of which actually are on my channel. But I packed my block up, I ran it out to him. I said, Shannon, I need your advice. What do you make of these hairline kind of scratches, horizontal scratches in the cylinder? He felt them. He's like, I don't know if they're that bad. You know, you might be able to get away with just honing it. So back home I came. I got on Summit's website and I bought myself a 4-inch ball hone. Now, to give you some more perspective on the timing here, this is like February, okay? And we're up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, brutal winters. And for any of you that have ever honed anything, you know it's a filthy mess. Like, you got to have oil all over the hone and it's flying, it's whatever. So I can't necessarily do this in my garage. I got to try and pick a day where I can do it out on my driveway. Well, as luck would have it, we had one of these Alberta Chinooks that most people know Alberta for, and it warmed up. But for most of you watching, you'll still think I'm nuts. It warmed up to about 40 degrees, okay? Like 8 to 10 degrees above 0 centigrade. Here I am out of my driveway, ball hone, big heavy drill, tarp down, and I'm honing my block. Long story short, the honing went well. I got a great new crosshatch a fresh new crosshatch in my block, and I got rid of the horizontal scratches. So disaster avoided. And I was thinking at the time too, if all else fails and I can't get rid of the horizontal scratching, well, then I'm in for a $2,500 machine shop bill. I really had nothing to lose because the ball hone was like $80. Anyway, so that disaster is now avoided, but I still have in the back of my head, well, it's going to cost me, I'm thinking maybe $1,000 to $1,500 to get these heads redone at this particular machine shop. I'm like, well, for $1,500, I could probably start looking at aluminum options. And I always had in the back of my head, I really wanted a set of these AFR 165's. Okay, heard lots about them. It's a great company and they got great technology in these heads. So you start thinking to yourself and justifying costs to yourself too, right? You're like, okay, it's going to cost me $1,500 to get these GT40 irons redone. Plus I got to spend another probably $300 in a heavier set of springs for them. I'm now crowding $2,000. Okay, let's just for fun see online how much a set of AFRs are. Well, AFRs were like $2,100 or $2,200 on LMR's site at the time. Long story short, I ended up justifying the purchase to myself. And another side of this too was I'm like, well, GT40 Ps are going to yield me, just for argument's sake, let's say 30 horse, maybe 40, 45 foot-pounds of torque. Aluminums, you're getting into a whole nother ball game, right? And way more tech is applied to these aluminum heads, especially the AFRs. You're probably looking at like 70, 80 horse, you know, and like upwards of 100 foot-pounds, give or take. Now, don't kill me on those numbers, guys, but like I think you get what I'm trying to say here. So I order the heads, okay? Now we're going down the rabbit hole. We've hit all these forks in the road. Now I'm at another fork, right? Now I got these heads, which are actually, from a flow perspective, gonna outflow the Cobra intake that I have. And I still haven't picked a camshaft at this point. So I get online, I start doing a little bit of my own homework, and I find this Thomas and Matt Moss. Okay, a lot of you probably heard of these folks. They've been known for many, many years, probably north of 20 years, for porting and polishing intakes, and I think they might even do some cylinder head work. Anyway, at the time they were the only guys that I knew of doing it. Now there's Big Dog porting and stuff. You can find them on YouTube. He's doing really amazing things with these intakes, like from what I gather anyway, making them flow at numbers that previously were thought to not be doable, okay? But anyway, I enlist in Thomas and Matt's expertise, and I stick my intake in a box, cover it with a bunch of popcorn styrofoam, and mail it off to them, which was a bit of a pucker moment because, well, most people know they're not making these Cobra intakes anymore, and I thought, you're always running a risk of losing something when you ship it, right? So here I am at the UPS store trying to tell the guy I want to insure it for obscene amounts of money, and plus it's heavy. It was an expensive shipping endeavor. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway, sent it off, got it back, and all was great with it, okay? And I told him sort of the program I was going to be running, for example, AFR 165's. After I had shipped the intake to them, I consulted again with Shannon at Western Motorsports and talked about some various cam options. I ultimately ended up settling with the Comp Cam XE 266 HR. And for any of you that missed my video on that, I've just done a video specifically on the cam and how my car reacted to it. I'll link that for you. You can go and check it out. He had actually recommended the bigger cam. I think it was the 272. My theory at the time was I really wanted to maintain the low end torque, or as much of it as possible that I knew from the stock motor. And the 272 was going to shift the torque curve up too far, in my own personal opinion, whereas the 266 kept it down low. Like I think it's like 1500 to 6250, and the 272 is like 1800 to 68. I don't know, however it works. I just wanted to really maintain that low end torque that these 5.0 HOs are known for, right? So now I got the heads, I got the cam, and I got the intake that's going to match it all. I got this flow package, right? That's all going to speak to each other cohesively and work nicely based on the on paper research that I've done, okay? And I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention it again, like having, well, good advice and good people with you when you're planning something like this is absolutely key. The other side of it is just have that end goal in mind. You know, like you really got to know where you're shooting for when you're doing something like this, because if not, you can get lost in the weeds real fast. You know, your cam could be too big, way too much lift. You got, you know, your stock intake, great big set of heads. You do all this stuff and you go, this isn't that fun. This didn't give me that much of a kick in the pants. Like what the heck did I do here? So you gotta have a goal in mind, okay? I alluded to the fact at the beginning of this that, you know, I was gonna do the GT40 P route initially, and then I ultimately decided on the aluminum route. Nothing against the iron GT40 route at all, okay? Well, you guys that have watched my other videos, you know I'm gonna be doing that on the 91 vert. I just got spooked with a machine shop bill. And now I know, depending on where you are, if you're in the States, if you're in Canada, you're in Europe, machine shop bills and costs can vary drastically, okay? And I get it, everybody's got to eat. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to beat anybody up here, but I was just dealing with a shop at the time that had really, really high prices. Chances are I would have got what I paid for. Like, you would have got really good work, because that's something else to consider. If you're gonna go for like cheap machine shop work, make sure that you're getting good quality, because cheap costs doesn't always equal good quality, okay? And vice versa. So just be aware of those things. This was just how I ended up in the mess that I did, I guess. Okay folks, so just to sum things up, I'll take you for a quick tour around the engine bay here. I think everybody always enjoys a little bit of a cinematic tour. I went to great lengths to literally either hand sand or sandblast and paint everything. Like, I'm talking the heads of bolts got painted, and then, you know, you mark them up when you're torquing them down, and then you got to touch them up with a model paintbrush. Like, it's crazy the lengths I went to, but I'm super happy with how it all turned out, right? There's nothing better than being able to go to a car show or something and pop your hood and be proud of the work you put in. And now it's funny because all these painted bolts and nuts and everything, this was way before I knew about the black oxide treatment that I now currently do to all my bolts and nuts. And for any of you that missed that video, I'll try and link it up in the top corner for you. You can check it out. It's a great little trick, and it treats the bolts and they don't rust and they look kind of black anodized. Anyway, and yeah, there's a little bit of a wire tuck that went on, right? This whole harness now goes through the fender and comes along the inside and the wheel well. I don't think you can kind of see the connection in the wheel well there versus being on the shock tower. It's still accessible to be unplugged, but that wire tuck happened, and then it ultimately knocked a little hole in this cover and brought in the mass air and my alternator wires and plugs, right? And then yeah, I reused the stock valve covers. I did have to clearance them so my rockers would clear. It wasn't a ton of clearancing, but had to do a little bit of work to them on the inside of the valve cover to clear them. But I like how the stock valve cover looks in there, kind of subtle, and I really like that color too, me personally anyway. Okay folks, so just to sum things up, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that, you know, aluminum's better than iron or like whatever. It boils down to your own personal preference and what you're trying to accomplish. Now in my case, what it boiled down to was I was going to be spending pretty much aluminum head money to get my GT40 Ps ready to put on this green coupe. So I justified to myself the expenditure of aluminum heads to make that come to fruition, okay? Am I happy I went the route I did? Yes. I probably would have always wondered, what are those AFR 165's all about? I probably would have bought them somewhere down the road for another project. Maybe it would have been for the 91 Vert. In this case, it's gonna get the GT40 treatment because I've already experienced the AFR treatment. I am happy with the way it went. And anyway, everyone's situation is a little bit different. And like I say, you might be living in an area where you can get a set of heads redone for $200, $300, $400, $500, right? Like, that's good value. I actually hope that that's what I'm in for in my local area, but I still got to find out. Anyway, I hope that helps. Okay guys, if you're in the middle of one of these, I wanted to have this conversation with you so you knew where my head was at when I was trying to figure this all out, and hopefully it helps you meander your way down your rabbit hole path, right? Or if you know someone else out there that's currently going through something like this, please share this with them. That's why I do these videos. One more thing is, I've been mentioning this in my other videos, but I am going to Foxtoberfest 2022, and I absolutely can't wait. I'm getting goosebumps just mentioning it right now. But for any of you going, let me know if you're gonna be there. I want to meet as many of you guys as possible. I hope I get to meet all of you, in all honesty. And really, really looking forward to this show. So if you're in the area, Concord, North Carolina, October 12th through the 15th, that's where I'm gonna be, okay? And I think that's gonna do it for this one. So thanks so much for tagging along, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye for now.